Introduction. The buried past. They say the desert keeps its secrets, but I've learned it only buries them. Shallow, restless, waiting for the right wind to uncover what's been left behind. San Miguel is a place built on such secrets, a patchwork of hope and regret stitched together by the stubborn souls who call it home. I've worn the badge here long enough to know that peace is never more than a breath away from breaking, and that every sunrise brings with it the chance for old ghosts to come calling. My name is Granger. I've seen men run from their pasts and watched the past run them down just the same. I've watched good folks make hard choices, and I've made a few myself that still keep me up at night. In this town, we measure time by the scars we carry and the promises we keep. This is a story about reckoning, about what happens when the past rides into town and demands its due. It's about family, forgiveness, and the price of truth. It's about the dust that settles after the storm and the redemption we chase, even when we're not sure we deserve it. If you're looking for heroes, you won't find many here. Just people doing their best to hold the darkness at bay one day at a time. And if you listen close, you might just hear the desert whispering its secrets, reminding us that nothing stays buried forever. Chapter 1. The Stranger at Dawn. There's a certain stillness to the desert at first light, a hush that settles over the world, as if the land itself is holding its breath. I felt it that morning, standing on the edge of San Miguel, the sky just beginning to pale low above the hills. The air was cool and sharp, carrying the scent of dew on sage and the faint, lingering memory of last night's rain. My boots left dark prints in the damp earth as I walked my patrol. The town behind me still asleep, windows shuttered, doors bolted against the unknown. I'd grown to love these quiet hours before the day's troubles could find me. The world felt honest then, stripped of pretense. I could hear the distant call of a mourning dove, the soft clatter of a horse's hooves from the livery, the slow, steady rhythm of my own breathing. For a moment I let myself believe that peace had finally settled over San Miguel, that the scars of the siege were healing, that we'd earned a little rest. But peace, I've learned, is a fragile thing. It can be shattered by the smallest sound, a footstep, a cough, the creak of a saddle. That morning it was the jangle of spurs and the low murmur of voices drifting up the road from the south. I turned, hand resting on the grip of my revolver, and watched as two riders approached out of the dawn. Their horses were lean and trail-worn, coats flecked with foam. The lead rider was a woman, tall and straight-backed, her hat pulled low over her eyes. Her coat was dust-stained, but her boots gleamed, and there was a confidence in the way she sat her horse that told me she was no stranger to trouble. The man beside her was older, his beard streaked with gray, his gaze wary and sharp. They reined in at the edge of town, the woman's eyes sweeping over the buildings, the battered church steeple, the patched-up windows. She met my gaze, and for a moment, the world seemed to narrow to the space between us. There was something in her eyes, something hard and haunted, a story I couldn't yet read. "Morning," I called, keeping my voice easy, my posture relaxed. "You folks passing through or looking to stay a while?" She studied me, her face unreadable. "Depends," she said, her voice low and even. "This San Miguel?" "It is," I replied. "I'm Granger, sheriff here." The older man grunted, glancing at the woman. She nodded, and he dismounted, stretching stiffly. "Name's Harlan," he said, offering a hand. His grip was strong, calloused. "This here's my niece, Miss Calder." She tipped her hat, her gaze never leaving mine. "We're looking for someone," she said. "A man. Goes by the name of Finch." The name hit at me like a stone in the gut. Old Mr. Finch had been a fixture in San Miguel for years. Quiet, gentle, always quick with a kind word or a helping hand. But I'd seen the fear in his eyes when strangers rode into town, the way his hands shook, when he thought no one was looking. I'd always wondered what ghosts he carried. "What's your business with Finch?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Harlan's eyes narrowed. "Family matter. Best we speak to him ourselves." I nodded slowly, weighing their words, the tension coiling in my gut. I'd learned to trust my instincts, and something about these two set them humming. I glanced back at the town, the first wisps of smoke rising from chimneys, the faint clatter of Mrs. Alvarez opening her cantina. San Miguel was waking up, unaware that trouble might already be at its door. "I'll take you to him," I said at last, "but you'll leave your guns with me for now." Town's had enough excitement lately. Miss Calder's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Fair enough, Sheriff. We're not here to cause trouble." They handed over their weapons, hers, a pair of pearl-handled revolvers, his an old rifle, with the stock worn smooth. I felt the weight of them in my hands, the cold promise of violence held in check. We walked together through the waking town, the morning sun painting the adobe walls in gold and rose. I could feel the eyes of my neighbors on us, curious and cautious. Maddox stood outside the livery, arms folded, watching with that quiet intensity of his. Sam, my deputy, lingered near the general store, his hand hovering near his holster, jaw set in that stubborn way of his, and I led the strangers to Finch's door, my heart thudding in my chest. I knocked, the sound echoing in the stillness. After a moment, the door creaked open and Finch peered out, his face pale, eyes wide with something like dread. "Sheriff," he whispered, voice trembling. "Got visitors, Finch," I said gently. "Family, they say." He stared at the two strangers, his hands shaking, and I saw the years fall away from his face, replaced by something raw and wounded. Miss Calder stepped forward, her voice soft but unyielding. "It's time, Uncle. You can't run from the past forever." The words hung in the air, heavy as thunder. I felt the weight of them settle over all of us, the promise of old secrets and new reckonings. The sun climbed higher, burning away the last of the night, and I knew that whatever peace we'd found in San Miguel was about to be tested once again. And so, as the day began, I stood at the threshold of another storm, the taste of dust and destiny sharp on my tongue, and wondered if this time we'd all make it through. Chapter 2. Old Ghosts. The morning sun crept higher, burning off the last of the mist and painting San Miguel in a harsh, honest light. I stood just outside Finch's door, the weight of the strangers' guns heavy in my hands, and watched as the past came calling for one of our own. The air was thick with the scent of baking bread from Mrs. Alvarez's kitchen, mingling with the sharper tang of horses and the faint metallic memory of last night's rain. I could feel the town waking up around me, boots on boardwalks, shutters thrown open, voices rising in cautious greeting. Inside, Finch's house was dim and close, the curtains drawn tight against the day. I stepped in behind Miss Calder and Harlan, the floor creaking under my boots. Finch hovered by the table, his hands twisting in the hem of his shirt, eyes darting from me to the newcomers and back again. He looked smaller than I remembered, the years and secrets weighing him down. Miss Calder took off her hat, letting a spill of dark hair fall around her shoulders. Her face was sharp, all angles and shadows, but her eyes were soft as she looked at Finch. "Uncle," she said, and the word was both accusation and plea. Finch's voice was barely more than a whisper. "Didn't think I'd ever see you again, Clara." Harlan stayed by the door, arms folded, his presence filling the room with a quiet threat. I could smell the dust of the trail on him, the sweat and leather and something older. Gun oil, maybe, or just the scent of a man who'd spent too long looking over his shoulder. I set the guns on the sideboard, close enough to remind them I was still in charge. "Do you want me to stay?" I asked Finch, my voice low. He shook his head, but his eyes begged me not to go far. "No, Sheriff, this is family business." I nodded, stepping back into the hall, but I left the door open a crack. I could hear the low murmur of voices, the way Clara's words trembled with anger and longing, the way Finch's answers came slow and halting. I caught fragments, names I didn't know, places I'd never been, a story written in regret and unfinished business. I leaned against the wall, feeling the cool plaster against my back, and let my mind wander. I thought about the way the past clings to a man, how it can follow you across miles and years, waiting for the right moment to drag you back. I thought about my own ghosts, my father's voice, my brother's laughter, the faces of men I'd buried and couldn't forget. A floorboard creaked behind me, and I turned to see Sam, my deputy, standing in the hallway. He looked tired, his eyes shadowed, but there was a spark of curiosity in his gaze. "Everything all right, Sheriff?" he asked, voice pitched low. I shrugged, glancing back at the door. "Depends on your definition. Finch's kin showed up. They're not here for a social call." Sam nodded, chewing his lip. "You want me to keep an eye on them?" "Yeah," I said, "but keep it subtle. No need to stir up more trouble than we already got." He grinned, the old mischief flickering in his eyes. "Subtle's my middle name," I snorted, the sound echoing in the quiet house. "That'll be the day." We stood there for a while, listening to the rise and fall of voices from the parlor. The tension in the air was thick enough to taste. Bitter, like old coffee left too long on the stove. I could feel the town outside, restless and watchful, waiting to see what would happen next. After a time, the door creaked open and Clara stepped out, her face pale but set. She looked at me, then at Sam, and I saw the weight she carried in the set of her shoulders. "Thank you, Sheriff," she said quietly. "We'll be staying a few days. There's things to settle." I nodded, meeting her gaze. "You'll have no trouble here, so long as you give none." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We're not here for trouble, just the truth." As she and Harlan walked out into the sunlight, I watched Finch sink into a chair, his head in his hands. I felt the old ache in my chest, the one that comes from knowing you can't save a man from his own past. Sam nudged me, his voice soft. "Do you think they'll bring trouble?" I watched the strangers disappear down the street, the dust swirling in their wake. "Trouble's already here, Sam. Just a matter of what shape it takes." The day stretched ahead, bright and uncertain, and I felt the weight of it settle on my shoulders. In San Miguel, peace was always a temporary thing, something you held onto with both hands, knowing it could slip away at any moment. And as I stepped out into the sunlight, I wondered what ghosts would come calling for me before this was all over. Chapter 3. Tensions in the Light. By midday, the sun was high and merciless, baking the dust in the street until it shimmered like a mirage. San Miguel was never a bustling place, but that day the quiet felt different, thicker, as if the whole town was waiting for something to break. I walked the length of Main Street, boots raising little puffs of red dust, the heat pressing down on my shoulders like a hand. I passed Mrs. Alvarez's cantina, the door propped open to let in a breeze. The smell of frying onions and fresh tortillas drifted out, making my stomach growl, but I wasn't hungry. Not really. My mind was too busy chewing on the morning's events, on the way Finch had looked at his kin, like a man seeing his own shadow come to life. I stopped at the livery, where Maddox was working a curry comb over a bay mare's flank. He glanced up, sweat streaking his brow, and gave me a nod. "Heard we've got visitors," he said, voice low. "Finch's family," I replied, leaning against the stall. "They say they're here to settle old business." Maddox grunted, his hands never stopping. Old business has a way of turning ugly. I watched the mare's hide twitch under the comb, the way Maddox's hands moved, steady, careful, like he was trying to soothe more than just a horse. "You ever run from your past, Maddox?" I asked, surprising myself. He paused, looking at me with those sharp, tired eyes. "Everyone runs, Granger. Question is, what catches up first? Your ghosts or your conscience?" I let that hang in the air, the words settling between us like dust. I thanked him and moved on, the sun beating down, sweat prickling at my collar. I could taste the salt of it on my lips, feel the grit of it on my tongue. Near the general store, Sam was talking with Tommy, the blacksmith's boy. Tommy's face was smudged with soot, his eyes wide with the kind of curiosity only kids have. Sam crouched beside him, showing him how to tie a proper knot, his voice gentle and patient. For a moment, I saw the man Sam was becoming, steady, kind, someone the town could count on. When Tommy scampered off, Sam straightened, brushing dust from his trousers. "You see Finch?" he asked. "Not since this morning," I said. "You?" Sam shook his head, worry flickering across his face. "He's spooked, Sheriff. I saw him at the well talking to himself, like he was arguing with someone who wasn't there." I frowned, glancing down the street toward Finch's place. The house looked the same as always, shutters drawn, porch sagging, a patch of wildflowers struggling in the shade. But I felt a prickle at the back of my neck, a sense that something inside was shifting. "Keep an eye on him," I told Sam, "and on our guests, quietly." Sam nodded, his jaw set. "Do you think they're dangerous?" I think anyone with unfinished business can be dangerous, I said, especially when the past comes knocking. The afternoon dragged on, the heat relentless. I made my rounds, checking in with the shopkeepers, sharing a few words with Mrs. Alvarez, who pressed a cool glass of lemonade into my hand and told me not to worry so much. I tried to smile, but the taste of the lemonade was sour on my tongue, my thoughts too tangled to enjoy it. As the sun dipped lower, I found myself drawn back to Finch's house. I stood across the street, watching as Clara and Harlan sat on the porch, their voices low and urgent. Finch paced behind them, his silhouette restless in the window. I could feel the tension radiating from the house, thick as thunderclouds. A sudden shout broke the stillness. Finch's voice, raw and desperate. I crossed the street in 3 long strides, Sam at my heels. Clara stood, her face pale, hands clenched at her sides. Harlan's eyes were hard, his jaw tight. "He's gone," Clara said, her voice shaking. "He just ran out the back." I felt a cold knot form in my gut. "Which way?" She pointed toward the hills, her hand trembling. "He said he couldn't face it, that he had to make it right." I looked at Sam, saw my own worry reflected in his eyes. "Get Maddox. Tell him to saddle up. We're going after Finch." As I turned toward the edge of town, the sky was streaked with gold and purple, the first stars winking into view. The air was cooler now, but my skin prickled with unease. I tasted dust and fear, the old familiar flavor of trouble brewing. We rode out, the 3 of us, me, Sam, and Maddox, following Finch's trail into the wild hills beyond San Miguel. The land was rough and beautiful, the scent of sage and creosote thick in the air. My heart pounded with every hoofbeat, the weight of responsibility heavy in my chest. I didn't know what ghosts Finch was running from or what he hoped to find out there in the gathering dark, but I knew this. In San Miguel, the past never stayed buried for long. And sometimes, the only way to find peace was to face the truth no matter how much it hurt. Chapter 4, The Reckoning in the Hills. The hills above San Miguel are a world apart. Wilder, lonelier, the kind of place where a man can lose himself if he's desperate enough. We rode in silence, the 3 of us, me, Sam, and Maddox, our horses picking their way through scrub and stone, the last light of day bleeding out behind us. The air was cooler up here, sharp with the scent of juniper and the faint sweet tang of wildflowers crushed under hoof. Every sound seemed magnified, the creak of saddle leather, the soft snort of a horse, the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. I kept my eyes on the trail, searching for signs of Finch. A broken branch here, a scuff in the dust there, small clues but enough to keep us moving. My mind churned with worry. Finch was no outlaw, but fear can drive a man to foolish things. I remembered the look in his eyes that morning, the way his hands shook, the way his voice caught on old secrets. I'd seen that look before, in men who'd run too long from the truth. Sam rode beside me, his face set and serious. The boyishness I'd seen in him that morning was gone, replaced by a hard edge. He scanned the hills with sharp eyes, his hand never far from his holster. Maddox brought up the rear, quiet and watchful, his silhouette long and lean in the fading light. I could feel the tension in all of us, a silent understanding that this ride might end in blood. We found Finch just as the last of the sun slipped behind the ridge. He was sitting on a flat rock at the edge of a dry creek bed, his back to us, shoulders hunched. His hat lay in the dust beside him, and his hands were clasped tight in his lap. He looked small out there, swallowed by the land and the coming night. I dismounted, motioning for Sam and Maddox to hang back. My boots crunched softly on the gravel as I approached. "Finch," I called, keeping my voice gentle. "It's Granger. You all right?" He didn't turn. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind sighing through the grass. Then he spoke, his voice thin and tired. "I never wanted this, Sheriff. I never wanted any of it." I sat down beside him, close enough to offer comfort, far enough to give him space. The rock was cool beneath me, the air tinged with the scent of sage and dust. "Sometimes the past finds us, no matter how far we run," I said, "but you don't have to face it alone." He let out a shaky breath, his hands trembling. "Clara and Harlan, they want answers. They want the truth about what happened back in Texas, about my brother, about the money that went missing. I thought if I left, if I started over here, it would all stay buried. I watched the sky darken, the first stars flickering to life. You can't outrun guilt, Finch. It'll eat you alive. But you can face it. You can make it right. He looked at me then, his eyes rimmed red, his face lined with regret. I was scared, Granger. I did things I'm not proud of. I lied. I ran. I let people believe I was someone I'm not. I nodded, feeling the weight of his confession settle between us. We all have things we wish we could take back. But you're not alone, Finch. Not anymore. Behind us, Sam and Maddox waited, silent sentinels in the gathering dark. I could see the worry in Sam's eyes, the way Maddox's hand rested easy on his rifle. They were ready for trouble, but I hoped it wouldn't come to that. A rustle in the brush made me tense, my hand drifting to my gun. Clara and Harlan stepped into the clearing, their faces shadowed but determined. Clara's voice was steady, but I heard the pain in it. Uncle, we just want the truth. We want to understand. Finch stood, swaying a little. I'm sorry, Clara. I should have told you years ago. I took the money. I was desperate. I thought I could fix things, but it only made them worse. Your father, my brother, he tried to stop me. We fought. He fell. I ran. The words hung in the air, heavy as thunder. Clara's face crumpled, tears shining in her eyes. Harlan's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. I stepped between them, my voice firm. He's told you the truth. It's up to you what you do with it. But there's been enough running, enough pain. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Clara crossed the space between them and wrapped her arms around Finch, her sobs muffled against his shoulder. Harlan looked away, his fists clenched, but I saw the tension drain from his body. The night deepened, the stars bright above us. I felt the weight in my chest ease just a little. Maybe there was a kind of peace to be found, even after all the hurt. We rode back to San Miguel in silence, the four of them together, the past finally spoken and the future uncertain. The town's lights glimmered in the distance, warm and welcoming. I tasted hope on the cool night air, fragile but real. As we reached the edge of town, Sam rode up beside me, his voice soft. You think it's over, Sheriff? I looked at the faces around me, tired, tear-streaked, but lighter than before. For now, Sam, for now. And as we rode into the waiting light, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we'd all earned a little rest.
Thanks for riding along, partner. If you enjoyed this tale from the wild frontier, give us a like and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Until next time, keep your boots dusty and your aim true.